Well, today, a man of interest is none other than Mabior Garang, the Mabior who's the ex-minister of water and irrigations. Apparently, is also the former assistant minister of interior affairs. Well, welcome to the point, and we're really pleasure to have you here. I mean, you're one besides Salva Kiir and Riek Machar, you're one popular politician. I mean, you being the son of the founding father, you've also been seen in the media due to your dress codes or different practices that you've been up to. And right now, you've been seen doing farming, which is quite interesting for the people of South Sudan. But how do you look at what is your vision in regards to agriculture in South Sudan, and how we can diversify the economy?
Primarily, primarily my vision is for my success, like personally as an
Possible
individual,
success.
and I wish I could be in South Sudan and do these things. Of course, when you do things and they are authentic, others get inspired, and of course, I will be there to try and help people. So I think I can explain my vision in short
Yes.
and say that it is to empower our our local farmers, you know, because as if we can call ourselves middle class people, uh, as middle class people, it will not be us who will, because I hear now that General Taban, General Kwalmanyang, and many people have farms on the Juba Bor Road, and they have been inspired, and like they are now everybody wants to farm. You see, but I don't think that this should be the way for such eminent persons in our society. Such eminent persons in our society should come together and help the local farmer. Because ours will be value addition. To make factories for value addition, and so we want to inspire the local farmers so that we can have outgrowers. For example, you saw the strawberries here. My vision is to take the strawberry farm to Juba and start a jam factory. You know, but if I was to start a jam factory in South Sudan, the strawberries I would produce on my farm alone would not be enough,
Enough. Yeah.
production for me to sustain a factory. So we need to promote the local farmers so that we can have outgrowers that can sell me their produce, and then now I make jam. In areas like in Lake State, where we know that areas like Rumbek are big producers of groundnuts. The middle class of people from Lakes State should be thinking about opening peanut butter factories, and leaving the cultivation of the groundnuts to the local farmer. The same in Yambio. You can have like how you have Del Monte here. You can have factories like the middle class can have the factories to can the juice or to put it in the Tetra packs, and leave the production of the. But now the minister in Juba wants to be the one to do all the whole process from the farm to the factory, and it's impossible. You see, so our vision is that we are not doing this as a charity just because it's charity and it will make us feel good. No, it is also because of our personal interest to develop the local farmer so that our factories can be successful. So that is kind of, in short, that is my vision. Another one is with this. This is food.
Okay.
Yeah, like we have been told all our lives in South Sudan that food cannot grow, and we decided not to listen to this propaganda.
Okay.
Because there's Google, there's YouTube, and we decided to go and see, okay, we decided to go do small research.
Yes.
How does this thing grow? And we found farmers in the United States, in all the climatic zones of the United States, they are growing food. We saw Chinese are growing food massively. It's being grown all over the world. Why would it not grow in our country? So we came to see that these are part of the oppression, and like they didn't want our people to be self-reliant, which is the same thing as self-determination.
Yes.
So we decided that we want to create a situation where in like if you know Kenya or East Africa. Like maize is their staple, and they have boards for like maize and this kind of thing. So we have a vision of creating a board for food in South Sudan, where we can buy from the local farmers and have stocks of maize for the market to be sold from wholesale to retail. You know, and we want to put seeds of food in the hands of every farmer because it is so easy to grow. We were so surprised of how easy it is to grow that we said that it can become a weapon for to eradicate hunger in our country. You know? So food is our secret weapon now.
I mean, we had a taste of it, and surprised that it actually grows here.
Yeah.
So is there particular areas in South Sudan that it can be specifically grown, or it's possible to grow it anywhere in South Sudan?
I think the main challenges with growing food in South Sudan would be the same as the challenges of growing anything, you know, because there's been not much development of agriculture over the years of war. So the wilderness has overtaken the residential areas in the areas where people would farm. And so like now the birds, insects have overwhelmed, you know, the area. And so if you don't have treated seeds, you know, I suspect that some people might have tried to plant food in South Sudan and they just put the seed in the ground without treating it, and it's eaten by insects, and then you confirm the myth. You know,
Yes.
it might grow and eaten. It's attacked by aphids and different worms, and like you don't use pesticides. You don't, you know. So if you can control the conditions, then I think food would grow anywhere. You know, like if the area is not good enough, you can grow it in greenhouse. So here we have experimented with growing it directly on the ground, on the raised beds that you saw, in the greenhouse. We've tried everywhere, and we found that in the greenhouse is where it grows the best, and on raised beds also it grows very well. It actually grows well anywhere, but in the greenhouse and on raised beds is where we found that it grew the best.
Do you think maybe there's anything of incentives or programs that the government or the NGOs that are working in partnership with South Sudan, are there incentives that they can come up with that will lead or inspire farmers to really take part in farming, really?
Well, the development partners, in my experience when I was a minister, I found that the development partners are very serious and they want to help our people. You know, but in a lot of cases you find that you have certain government officials who don't want the free things coming to our people, because there's the culture of 10% which has been developed in our country, and if you're not going to get 10% from a project, then like it's not worth pushing it through. You know, so development partners end up facing a lot of difficulties in our country. Plus also the difficulties of our people not having the kind of civic education to be able to know how to apply for some of these monies which are available for development. You know, so in the national conversation now we want to be a consultancy to local farmers in terms of cooperatives, community-based organizations, local NGOs who might not have these skills. We want to help so that they can be able to have access. And we even as the national conversation, as a local NGO, we are also going to try and target and work with local governments and work with also development partners to try and create PPPs for us to bring development to our country. But all this will not be possible without security in the country. So for the moment now, we have been advocating for the implementation of security arrangements so that we can be able to go on the ground and be able to do the work that we need to do. And this is the reason why we advocate for security arrangements. And when we were advocating for security arrangements, we were portrayed as anti-peace because our people were led to believe that security arrangement was for the bodyguards of Dr. Riek Machar in Juba. But the security arrangement is not for the bodyguards of the politicians in Juba. The security arrangement is to create an environment in the country in which our people can go back to their farms. Security arrangements is food security, because food security is at the root of all the conflicts in our country. Yeah. So this is the reason why it is very important for security arrangements to be implemented, even if we don't implement anything else in the agreement. Because I don't care for struggles for power, who's going to be commissioner, who's going to be a member of parliament, who's going to have a specialized committee. That is not important. The important thing is for us to have security in the country so that our civil population can return to their villages and start farming, and provide food security in the country. Everything else, the politicians can even go to blows, by hand, and we don't care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask. Okay. First of all, let me ask, how vast is your knowledge in regards to farming in South Sudan? Because I would really want to find out that, do we really need to adopt any irrigation methods or schemes to produce food in South Sudan, or is the natural rainfall enough, including the fertile soil?
No, it's not enough. There's a lot of. I think the Ministry of Agriculture has done some research, and they also have a agriculture development master plan.
Yes.
And I think you can get a lot of details there. The Kenya Commercial Bank also has done a lot of research, and they have published some documents which you can get in South Sudan to get some of the statistics, some of the details. But there's no agricultural research institute. Even us, when we started our agriculture in Kaya and Yei, we had to take soil and water from South Sudan and bring it to Kenya to be tested. So those kind of facilities are not there right now in South Sudan, and we have to set them up. But we decided to start anyway, and do trial by error. So in my presence in the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, I found that there's a lot of like South Sudan needs irrigation, especially with the issues of climate change and this kind of thing. Rainfall is no longer the same as how it was in the past. So we have a situation in South Sudan where it's either too much water or no water at all. So there is a need for us to be able to control that.
And I see when we're talking about agriculture, we've really limited it to farming. What about livestock? What about fishing? Why is it something we're doing compared to farming?
Well, agriculture in general, includes all these aspects, different aspects. And we do have projects for the pastoralist communities. It's only that here now, cattle is more expensive. In order for you to start projects with cattle, it's more expensive, and so it's easier to start through cultivation and planting and these kind of things. But we do have projects, in Nairobi, the farm that you visited in Nairobi, we are going to put a poultry project there for producing eggs, and we're going to export these eggs to South Sudan, until the time when we're able to establish it there. So from the poultry, in South Sudan, for example, among the cattle keeping communities, we have ideas of dairy, because like our children have no milk now. Our milk comes from Uganda, I think.
Yes.
But our children, in order for them to grow strong and have good nutrition, we need to have our own milk in our own country. So we want to encourage, instead of the youth fighting intercommunal violence in between the cattle camps, we say that if they were able to produce dairy farms, for example, and when we go to South Sudan and we are on the ground in South Sudan, we will start our own cattle camps and set up demonstration farms of what you can do in a cattle camp, from dairy in terms of milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, to the use of the animal skins, to the horns, to the cow dung for micro industries in terms of rural electrification. You know, there are generators which operate on biogas. You know, and you can produce biogas in like the majority of, like, maybe 80% of South Sudan are pastoralists. So you can turn dung into a source of wealth creation, where like the cattle camps will accumulate their dung and be able to sell it per kilo to the electric factory, or to the electric company, I mean, you see. So we do have ideas for pastoralist communities, but because of the financial factor, we decided to start with what we can afford. Yeah, but the idea for the pastoralist communities is definitely there, and even how sedentary and pastoralist communities can live in harmony, you know, because the dung, you know, is used to fertilize the fields of the sedentary communities. They can buy fertilizers and things from the cattle keeping communities, like all the food in terms of if we were to introduce zero grazing, the areas of the people who don't have cattle can provide the animal feed. And so how can we make our communities be able to live in harmony, you know, through integration of both communities, and how like they can, like where their professions intersect, we make the unity come through that. You know? And so we have ideas of promoting peace through that, instead of promoting animosity, where cattle keeping people's cows go into somebody's field and eat their crops, and then like intercommunal violence comes from there. We want to teach our people how these communities can actually live together, you know, for their welfare and prosperity, for their mutual welfare and prosperity.
We've been aware of the cattle rustling that has been taking place in different counties and biomes, and it has led to continuous loss of lives. You know, I mean, how do we reduce this? How do we overcome it?
Anything that you want to solve, you must first understand it. You know, social science, they teach us that in order to solve a problem, you must delineate the problem, you must define the problem.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we talk about cattle rustling in our country, that is the first mistake. It's when we call it cattle rustling, because it is not cattle rustling. Because if we go into our cultures as pastoralist people, let me call them like the different Nilotic communities that are cattle keepers, the culture of cattle rustling has always been there. No matter where you go, even in Africa, among people who keep cattle rustling is part of the culture. You see. Now let me describe to you what is cattle rustling. Cattle rustling is a way that our elders, our society, used to teach youth how to create wealth. You see. And there were certain values within the system of cattle rustling. So that if you become very poor, you have nothing, you want to leave your father's house now, you want to establish your own herd, you can go to the edge of somebody's compound, somebody who has very many cattle, one of these people who have the 1% in the society who have accumulated a lot of cattle. You will hide by their house, or somebody who has a medium amount, you will hide by their house and you will observe that compound for a week or 2 weeks and know at what time do they go to the field, at what time do they go get water, and you will be able to know over time at what time are the cows unattended. You see, and then you might go and like the objective of cattle rustling, the skilled cattle rustler will take your cattle without you noticing it. You will later notice that, hey, there's some cattle missing. That is the skillful cattle rustler. The intention of a cattle rustler was not to go and kill somebody. Even though in the process of rustling cattle, you might accidentally kill somebody because you are not so good in rustling the cattle and you are caught. And if somebody catches you stealing something of theirs, that you go to the field, you take care of this animal with hardship, and then somebody want to just come and steal it, of course you will want to kill that person. So the person has to defend themselves. In the process, somebody might get killed blood would spill accidentally, and a blood feud might ensue. But the societies had ways of mitigating blood feuds. Once you run into the house of the chief, you're protected, and then people sit down, and the blood feud is resolved. An animal is killed, and the Banjbid says that if anybody goes back to this conflict again, somebody, something, may your blood flow like the blood of this animal, and it is resolved. What is happening today is that whole groups of youth will get up, go and kill women and children, and even the cattle. That what kind of is that cattle rustling? That is not cattle rustling. This is mischief from the traditional elite who are trying to divide and rule our people. So the first mistake we make is by calling it cattle rustling. Then again, we add on to mistake after mistake, and we can say something like, Bear, the Murle have taken our cattle. What is your evidence that it was people from Murle? And even I think that's what I can say about cattle rustling. That it is not cattle rustling. Calling it cattle rustling is mischief.
So then, how do we just define communal conflict, or just what do we call it then?
I call it mischief.
Mischief.
Yeah, it's just mischief.
So how do we stop? Okay, so let me not say how do we stop the cattle rustling. So how do we stop this mischief you're talking about?
It's through arming our people with information, because it is ignorance. A lot of it is ignorance. Like we've been talking about. I don't know if we talked about it earlier, but I think we talked about it yesterday in a casual talk. The issue of mass-mindedness in our society, and the freedom of the individual. So we need to empower the individual in our society, so that our society is not composed of a mass-minded people, but is composed of empowered individuals, because a society is the sum total of individuals in the society. And if the individual in the society is wretched, you will have a wretched society, that cannot think properly. Anybody who has achieved the level of being an individual in our society has to escape the Boma. You cannot remain in the Boma and be an individual. You will suffer, you see. So you end up having to leave. And there are no real empowered individuals in our society. So we need to make our people understand the importance of the individual. And that's what the liberation struggle was about, the freedom of the individual.
Maybe now, as we come to the end, you're a South Sudanese citizen who's investing abroad, and many other South Sudanese who are investing abroad. Do you believe doing economic investment outside South Sudan is beneficial to the economy of the nation of South Sudan in particular? And so then, would you advise then, since you people are investing outside, would you then advise foreign investors to also tap into opportunities or sectors which have not yet been occupied?
This is an interesting question, because I think this is the kind of question you answer with a question. You see,
Okay.
what economy? What economy in South Sudan? What economy are you talking about? There's no economy in South Sudan. This is what we've been talking about earlier, and how the slave trading economy ended. When the slave trading economy ended, it was not replaced by any other economy. Like, we are now in the search of establishing an economy in our country. There is no economy. And when we say things like this, the people who have taken power don't understand these things and don't want to listen to us when we say these things. And this is the foundation of an economy is agriculture, so that you can later on industrialize through agriculture. And nobody is focusing on this. And this is part of the oil curse in many countries, because there are countries that don't have oil, have to be able to get their money through taxing the people, But in South Sudan, they don't need to tax the people, so the people are not valuable to them, and they can just get any kind of oil money. So they don't need to build an economy. When they get sick and their children get sick, they go abroad, they get treated. They don't care about building the country. Many of these traditional elites, So there are no international best practices of business in South Sudan. You know, I would call it a black market, you know, economy. There's no real economy where you can live like somebody in diaspora now in America or Australia has saved up money, is able to come to South Sudan and establish an honest business. You know, it's impossible in South Sudan. You know, you can want to invest out of sentiment, but you will lose all your money. It will not be a sound business investment, you know, because even just any Shawish or any sergeant from just walking on the street who feels entitled that this is our government can come into your business and destroy your business. If you have a restaurant, people from national security can decide that we are going to be assigned to that restaurant, and we go and hear what people are saying there. And they come and disrupt your business, you know, and even just the negative culture where people from your clan and your village can just come and disrupt your business and say that this belongs to us, we the people of this and that place, and then they come in and they just destroy your business. So from the level of insecurity to the level of just negative culture, there's no environment for investment in our country. So even when there are some people who cheat international investors, they go and sell a very rosy story about how South Sudan is such a good country to invest in, and then like they take $10,000 to sell information about South Sudan, and they lie to investors, and investors come to South Sudan. Power is the first thing you need in a country. If you want it, where's the power company in South Sudan? Is it the power of Biomatok that I always make fun of in Facebook? That this thing, like when something is going to go badly, I say it will be like the power of Biomatok. Is it the power of Biomatok that we are going to do development with in South Sudan? You know, so I can want to invest in South Sudan out of sentimentalism because it's my country, and I feel, but I will just lose all my money. You know, it will not be a smart business investment. You know, and a business decision is what makes you money. You know, so why would I make that decision to invest in South Sudan? You see, the people who are making money in South Sudan right now are people who are doing deals. You know somebody, you do a deal, and like if you know people, you go and you follow up your money through the Ministry of Finance. More people who have done honest business in South Sudan have not been paid than people who have done nonsense things and been paid. And like the Dura saga is an example of this, where people who delivered sorghum were not paid. And people who just came with their papers without delivering the sorghum and had somebody sign on it were paid money. You know, until today there are people who have lost money from getting loans in banks to try and go and do deals in this Dura saga. So like what we have are like, in South Sudan there are Lebanese doing business, and it's not bad for Lebanese to do business in South Sudan. Everybody is welcome. But some of these characters, individual characters, who are doing business in South Sudan are not Lebanese from Lebanon. They are Sierra Leonean Lebanese who were part of there are people who go from pirate economy from post-conflict economy to post-conflict economy. They are economic pirates who take advantage of post-conflict economies that are not so established, and they make their millions there. And these are people who had been seen, you know, in Sierra Leone during the post-conflict situation in Sierra Leone. They moved that they are in South Sudan. They came to South Sudan. Some of them came from Iraq during that confusion in Iraq. And some of these businessmen have come to South Sudan because of the nature of that economy. Me personally, I don't have any, you know, people. There's a situation which has happened in South Sudan for some reason. People are afraid to associate themselves with me, you know, and so it became very difficult for me. I have some contracts that I did where I was not paid for some reason. I'm told things like, this is not those days of yours. I don't know what those days of mine were, you know. And so what am I supposed to do? I have to survive, you know. And so in a way, I've been an adopted son of Kenya, you know, and I've lived in Kenya for a very long time, and the people of Kenya love me very much. And so I feel at home here. Nobody beats me up on the streets like how I've been beaten up on the streets in South Sudan. And all I'm trying to do is just contribute, you know, my faculties to the development of our people. So I could say in a way that I've been pushed out of South Sudan. It's not me who wanted to leave South Sudan.
So that gives you the right now to invest outside.
Yeah, I invest outside, and so that I can be able to survive, yes. And the economy in Kenya is It's where you can feel safe to invest your money, and nobody is going to come from any barracks and come and talk to you nonsense, and say this is not those days of yours.
So it's justifiable for our other leaders and the elite to continue just investing outside while the common mwananchi just remains there.
As a sound business, in term, if we are talking business, then yes, the answer is a resounding yes. You have to invest outside. Otherwise, it's not a business decision. If you have a lot of money, like some of the tycoons who have made a lot of money in South Sudan, like I don't have a problem with the tycoons in South Sudan. My problem is with the fact that they don't invest their millions in the country, because they are the ones who have money that they can waste, and invest in an economy where you're not going to make your money, and you can just throw away your money. They have the money to throw away, but we don't have the money to throw away. And if I was one of these tycoons who had made my money through the embezzling money and those kind of things, I would have taken the money and not taken it to Dubai or to Thailand. I would have invested in the economy of our country. Like there are corrupt people everywhere, in Uganda, in Kenya, but they take their money and they invest it in their economy and they provide employment for their people. And so I don't have a problem with people who are corrupt in our government per se. I have a problem with how they spend the money that they make, because corruption is a natural part of life. It's part of nature. So I think that what else can our people do? The majority of the population, or let us be generous and say half of our population live outside the country. And there are people who have been doing propaganda and saying that we are farming outside the country.
Yes.
And then we ask them, but all the food you're eating in Juba is being farmed outside the country. Like, what is the reason? If it's wrong for us to farm outside the country, then you start it inside the country, and then we will come and join you. You will prove it to us that it is okay to farm inside the country, and then we will come in shame. We will be ashamed. You will shame us, and we will come to South Sudan and we will join you in the cultivation. But there is a reason, the same reason that is making our people be in the refugee camps and in displaced camps inside the country, and it's the same reason that's making us not cultivate in the country. If we are cultivating outside the country, the food that is being taken to South Sudan is being cultivated outside the country. Shouldn't those people be happy that it is South Sudanese farmers outside the country feeding us? Because it is still foreign farmers who are feeding you. Whether we are farming outside the country or farming where, you're still being fed by foreign farmers. So isn't it better that we now, farming outside the country, can be able to start a conversation about the importance of security arrangements? Because when people see that we are farming outside the country, the natural question will come up, why don't they come and farm in South Sudan? Because there's no security. So let us have a conversation. Let us not have a conversation about Mabior is farming outside the country, how dare you. Let us have a conversation about why is Mabior farming outside the country, and it brings us to have a conversation about security in our country. We have an agreement right now. It is limping. It is at the end of its life. But there is an opportunity that if we don't implement anything else in that agreement, and we only implement the security arrangements, there can be a future for our country.
Okay, so maybe what do you have to tell our people, the people of South Sudan, the intellectuals, and like you like saying the generally confused?
It's time. Like what I think the message that we have, and it's not just from me but from the national conversation in general, is one of what we call political education, and it is important for this generation to be able to identify, their purpose, and it's a quote by Frantz Fanon, that each generation has to be able to fulfill its destiny and be able to discover that destiny and betray it or fulfill it, and the generation of our parents and our parents' parents, they fought, to be gave us this day, you know, and there are methods of struggle in every generation, depending on the objective realities, you know, of that generation may face. So in the generation of our parents and our parents' parents, they fought with like bows and arrows, they fought with spears, they fought with assault rifles, which we call Kalashnikov. And so in 1960s up to the 1980s, you know, it was okay to use armed struggle as a method of a struggle. Because the objective realities of the time, the information technology revolution had not exploded the way it has exploded today. So it was easier to keep a secret in 1960. It was harder to leak a document in the 1960s. So like movements could keep their secrecy. The technology of the drone technologies and satellite technologies to like detect people on the ground and all that were not so developed as they are today. You know, so the youth of the 1960s, of the 1970s, of the 1980s were able to go to the bush and use the armed struggle as a method of a struggle, you know. But in this generation, we find ourselves in rapidly changing times, and the objective conditions, you know, the objective realities that this generation find themselves in are completely different, you know, and rapidly changing even, you know, so that to use methods of struggle from a previous generation and their objective reality will not be relevant today. You know, the generation of our parents wanted to educate our people, but they could not because they were confronted with the war effort, you know, and they could not put down the gun and go teach people. They would be captured. So they had to confront the war effort, and that was that generation's job, and they did it, and they gave us what we have today. So now we still find ourselves in hardships and in problems. And so how does this generation now solve these problems? We have to sit down and figure out what will be the tools of struggle of this generation. And so we have identified political education, you know, as a method of struggle, because anything that we do should be accompanied with political education, because our people have been isolated because of the history of the slave trade and colonialism and neocolonialism. Our people have been isolated from the rest of the human family. So we need to teach our people, we need to modernize our societies. You know, so I think that this is the main message, that we need to educate our people. Political education, for example, I've talked about women's empowerment, for example. I've talked about many things, like we have to be able to make these things be accompanied by political education, because if you just say that we will have 35% for women, that's very nice, and it might help some women at, you know, get jobs at the executive level and that, but how does that help our women in general? You know, because even now the 35% for women is hard to implement, because you can implement it in Juba, where President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek can, you know, impose it. But once you go to the state, once you go to the Boma, it becomes more difficult to implement the 35% for women, because the young men in the society don't have the political education to be able to allow it to go through, you know, and will use their ignorance to, you know, to stifle the whole thing. And it's happening all over the Bomas now, because even at the Boma level, there should be 35% representation. But the conditions of the Boma don't allow for that. And so if you just say that you try and impose 35% for women in the Boma, you can end up in intercommunal violence if it's not accompanied by political education about the same. You see? And there are some areas where like women can't get employment because it maybe the woman might be needed to do a night shift. You see, and that society is not ready to have their girls be out past 7.
True.
You see, and if you don't have political education, then whatever policy you're trying to do will backfire. You see, so we need to sit down and think about the methods of struggle in the next generation, because I believe that the political struggle is over. The political struggle gave us South Sudan.
Thank you very much.